My gosh, I am so excited to be here with you today, Melissa. Welcome to the podcast, Melissa Evans. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you, Kristen. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah. We've been friends for what, like
Y-
over a year,
Yeah,
2 years?
yeah,
Time
we're close
flies.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like every time I talk to you and every time I just like get in your orbit, I get really inspired by you because you have such a great
Oh,
attitude. You have such a great zest for life. Like you're able to
oh,
help
thank
your
you.
clients in such a fascinating way and you're constantly iterating and evolving. And like some people shy away from that, but you really
Mm,
lean in. And I just want to honor you for that.
Thank you, Kristen. Means a lot coming from you. I really appreciate that. It's so cool.
Yeah. Okay. I want to formally introduce you and then have you kind of get into a little bit of your story. Is that okay?
Oh, perfect.
Oh, okay, fun. So, if you don't know Melissa Evans, you are in for a treat. She is a luxury story brand and sales strategist, right? So, we've got that in common, the sales background. She's an author, a speaker, and a co creator of the Go VIP movement, helping mission driven women build premium businesses that create wealth, freedom, and impact without the burnout of traditional coaching models. So if
Mhm.
you know, you know.
Yes.
And after more than 22 years in high level luxury sales and generating millions in revenue, she now coaches consultants and experts how to position their story,
Mhm.
expertise, and offers to attract higher ticket, oh, she calls them soulmate level clients,
Mhm.
right? And she teaches systems. And you're really just gonna wanna stick around and listen to Melissa. She does live events, she does immersive workshops, and again, like I said at the beginning, she is truly just a joy to be around. So thank you, Melissa.
Oh, thank you for that introduction. Oh my goodness, thank you, Kristen. I'm so excited to be here and share with your audience and get to know them a little bit better and spend time with you.
Yeah, I know. I just love it. I was like, let's just do a podcast so that we can catch up. But tell us in your own words, now that I introduced you, like, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us your story.
Wow. So let me just say this. I hid for 45 years and coasted in a career and still made millions and millions of dollars for other people and for myself. And I woke up one day at 50 and realized that my marriage was almost over. I mean, I felt like my marriage was ending. My career was killing me. I was unhappy. And I thought, there's got to be more to life than this. And all my friends around me were saying, why don't you just retire? Let's travel. Let's do all these things. And I said, I feel like there's more in me. And I left that career to start a coaching business. Well, I'm going to put that in quotes for a second because the industry tells you that coaching is go out and serve and nurture and spend, 12 hours a day in a Zoom room serving people. And I did love serving people. And I woke up one day and realized I just replaced my job, my job that was not impactful, that did not feed my soul, with another job that wasn't allowing me to create the impact that I wanted to create. I was making $40,000 a year, working with about 40 people, and I woke up at 2 a.m. I fell asleep on my laptop. Like, I woke up and I'm like, I started crying. I'm like, nobody can see me crying right now. I'm just gonna cry and just let everybody know. Like, I was like, I can't do this anymore. What, maybe this dream, maybe I should go back to that job. Uh, in this process of leaving my job, a lot of things healed in my life. And so I'd already like healed my marriage. A lot of things had kind of fallen into place. It's funny how when you leave something that you know is not right for you, things start falling into place for yourself. And I asked myself 3 questions really. I mean, it just started happening. When you start really aligning and shedding the things that you don't need, it just starts happening. And I remember waking up at the laptop, fast forward back, and I asked myself, "How can I make more money?" Okay, let's just face it, guys. It's okay to make money. Can we say it's okay to make money?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you're mission driven, when you
Mm.
really wanna help people. And then the second question was, "How can I help more people while I'm doing that?" And then the third thing that I asked was, "How can I do it while I'm free?" Really free, because we usually start our coaching businesses to be free, but then we don't realize that we're replacing that freedom really is an eventual thing if you have the right systems and the right strategy and the right business in place, and we're not taught that. So I started really shifting a little bit in my business, and it took me through this journey to a mastermind. And I went to this mastermind, and I remember thinking, "This is it. If this doesn't work, and I'm going to try to figure this out." And I started talking to women, and all these women started sharing these stories with me. And I sort of remember my trauma story. I have a trauma story that's part of my book, Savage Daughter Speak, that's being written right now. And that story I hid for so long, and I realized at that event that that story was the reason I hid for 45 years in that career, that I was creating a fortress around myself, and all these other women were going through the same thing. And so the next day they said anybody who wants to can come up on stage and they can share anything they want. They can share their offer, they can share their story, you can share whatever you want. And I at this time, this was before I was really, really heavily into my high ticket offer. I didn't really understand what a high ticket offer was. And so I was still pushing a 2K offer in my Zoom room. And I thought, I'm not going to even talk about my offer. I'm just going to get up there and I'm going to tell my story. So that night I wrote down a 5-step. I didn't even know it was a framework. I just said, okay, I'm going to talk about my story. Then I'm going to say what I changed. And then I'm going to do this. And I'm going to get up there and I'm just going to share my story and talk about the vision of what I want to create in the future. And I did that. And something really amazing happened, Kristin. I got off the stage and all these women just started coming up to me. Like, I think it might have been 30 or 50 women over the course of the event saying, I don't know when you're going to start this business, but I want to be a part of it. I too have a story. I have a story. I have a story. And that's when I realized that if you could give people permission to actually tell their story in a way that's empowering for their offer and empowering for their business, that it can create so much more connection. And I remember leaving that event with numbers and names. As a good salesperson, Kristin, you get names, you connect.
Yeah.
Within, I think it wasn't immediate, it wasn't a six-figure day, but it was over the course of a 30-day to 60-day window. I made $100,000 from the women that were in that room.
Peace.
After struggling for years and years, falling asleep on my laptop with a 2K offer and a $40,000 a year, I realized, okay, if I can do this off of one stage, one story, one event, what could I do if I made this part of my method? And so
Mm.
this is what I help women do. I help them learn how to turn that story that maybe they think they've outgrown. I teach them how to tell it in a way that's leadership. And I actually show them how to infuse it into their offer and restructure what they do so they can make more money, help more people, and attract the tribe that they want to help. And it's just been a whirlwind since.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so much to like dig into right there. Like, because, okay, so women, so you're like, lead me down a path, right?
Okay.
At the end of the day, if somebody was like, okay, I'm interested, but I don't know if I should listen to the rest of this podcast, right?
Mm.
What's what's the number one thing you would tell somebody right now as to like how they could take their story and use it to have impact?
Well, first, let me just say before I even do that is if you don't have a story you're hiding in your business, and I'm pulling the Band-Aid off right now. Because the thing about it is typically the story that you are shying away from or you're pushing aside for whatever reason is also the limit or the glass ceiling on your business, period.
Yeah. I mean,
So I
you know,
know that
I
most
wanna dive
women.
into that, but yes, I wanna
Yeah,
dive
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So, and the thing about it is most women don't, or people in general don't have a business problem. They have a message problem and they have a identity problem.
Mhm.
So when you're not owning the story, but you're usually called to help the person, let's draw the string out. You want to help the person like you. They don't know anything about you because you're not sharing the story. So
Right.
how can you really help the person? So what I would say is the very first step that I do is I go into their current business and I look at what their offer is and what their mission is. And they always have a mission. They always say, I want to do this. I want to make money for my family. They talk about their family first. Then they go into what they really want to do in the world. And then I say, okay, well, why? And I go 7 layers deep with them. Why? And what ends up happening is we get back to a story. I'm like, well, do you ever tell that story in your business?
Mm.
They said, oh no, I've out. That woman's gone. I go, she's gone, but she's that story of hers is your leadership. Why aren't you telling that inside of your brand and building a brand universe that actually makes you a one of a kind coach? So that's the
Yeah.
very first step as we work on messaging and identity, and they go hand in hand because your story really isn't about you anymore. It's about the women or men that you help. And if you're not brave enough or confident enough or believe that that story even matters anymore because maybe you don't want to go back into the pain, well, I can show you how to do it without that in a way that's very empowering. But if you're not willing to tell it, the people that you want to help won't come and you're going to struggle. And we've all been on the struggle bus at 2 a.m. At the computer. Believe me, I've lived this. I know what it
Yeah.
means. So that's the very first step is I actually tap into their story and show them how it becomes their sales pitch, their movement, their keynote, maybe the
Mhm.
framework for a book, and definitely a message for their business that can bring them even more clients in a much easier way than they're actually finding them now.
Okay, so that's why you guys wanna keep listening, and now I can't help myself because I do wanna dive into that. I mean, you think about the cavemen and how they communicated, right? It was through storytelling, or how we know
Mhm.
anything about our great grandma, right? Or grandparents
Yeah.
even beyond that, and this ancestral, right, traditions that get passed on is literally through storytelling. So
Mm.
there's stories like that. I like to call them now main character stories because
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe like we have more than one. You
I
might
agree.
have, I mean, I come from the angle, so I want to hear your angle. I tell my clients you'll have 2 to 3, depending on the age you are and such. Like, we're not gonna have 15. When I sold high ticket offers for so many years, I was telling one story no matter what then the system was I was teaching at the end. But now
Mm.
that I'm doing real estate, I did realize, oh my gosh, my real estate journey is a different journey. It's a different story. And so that's
Yes.
then, at least in my life, in my business, 2 stories. So probably it's the same. So I have more I want to
Mm.
ask, but like for you and your coaching, what is that threshold for you? Like, how do you coach
Mm.
people? Is it, do you also believe there's more than one story?
Mm.
Because like then there's, I call them supporting cast stories. Like there's tons of
Yeah.
little
So
stories, but I
cool.
think you're talking about like the main story, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you said this because there is the main story, then there's all the stories that that main story births.
Yeah.
So, it's like this and sometimes it's overwhelming to people to go, What do you mean I've got" like, I have a deep, dark story that I don't tell every single day in my brand, but it's the reason I help the women that I do. When I look at women, I see that version of myself. I see it. And, trauma at 6 years old isn't something that builds a business, but it does show me the women who are hiding. I can see it. I always use this phrase, a sparrow knows a sparrow. You know when someone has a trauma or they're hiding or they're not showing up, and you know that if they don't unlock that story and own it in leadership, they'll never break the glass ceiling. So that it's almost like it's a healing. Finding
Yeah.
that deeper story is almost about finding your mission and what I call your manifesto for your business, the movement that you want to create.
Mm,
Once you have the movement, that dials you into the audience that
mm,
you ideally like to help in a broader way. And then from there, you use the same story method to create every single story for your system. So my story on stage is one of the stories. Then I have other stories around different methods. So you're able to use the same framework that you use to create your main messaging story that becomes what you live and die with. Maybe that's the book
mhm,
that you write. Maybe it's the client that you help. It's the keynote that you deliver, and then inside of that, you have all of the smaller stories that are for that audience that you're really called to deliver. And oftentimes, like you said, they're around the system that you teach.
mhm,
Sometimes they're around the movement that you want to put into the world. And sometimes I've worked with coaches just on speeches. I've been a writer, by the way. I'm a published poet as well as writing my first book. And I've been writing since I was 7 years old. So writing for me is like ChatGPT has nothing on being able to just write something. And there's just something really magical about finding a pivotal moment in your life and being able to show people the before and after that really converts from a sales perspective, from a movement perspective. So I do agree with you. There's a bunch of different stories, but when you want to really find that mooring line that pulls you out every day and makes you show up, makes you magnetic, makes people want to work with you, it really goes back to that core story. And it doesn't have to be a trauma.
yeah,
Sometimes it's a happy story. We have a mentor in common who has more of a happy story as her, like joy is her biggest message in her business is have fun, and her story is completely different, but it's still a story that motivates and attracts other women or men like her.
yeah,
So a lot there, but that's really there is the core story, and then there are all the little stories that you can tell from stage around every single thing, whether you're going to the grocery store or whether your son just
right,
had his first birthday, you name
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I tell a story about my grandpa
Yeah.
teaching driver's ed, I tell a story about the dog track. Okay, and I think then you teach us a system, so you got me and really inspired. We're gonna go, I don't wanna go there yet, but I want you to teach me a system so that I can
Mm.
pull this real estate story out of me, because it actually is something
Yay.
that I need to do for myself, for my business, and maybe if we practically work through mine while you teach us the system, that'll help others. But before we go there,
Okay, cool.
right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to this main character story. as I call it, but your story, like you're saying, because I know you said it's not all
I call it the savage story.
okay,
Yeah.
savage story. I know it's not always trauma, and I would argue the mentor we share in common, there's I don't maybe just because I've analyzed it and studied it, or I also see myself in it. Nonetheless, I'll talk about me, not her. It's like my story for so many years was on April 17th, 2023, I got let go unexpectedly from my six-figure VP job. And I learned how to tell that story with enough emotional detail because it's often, hey, I lost my job and I started
Mm,
this business rather than we were $350,000 in consumer debt.
mm,
Someone say, oh, and we were this and we were that. And like telling this story 1,000 plus times over the last 3 years, I remember when the words came out of my mouth the first time. I was like, "I cannot believe I'm sharing this stuff.
mm.
This isn't." So I don't know if it's trauma. It's certainly not like extreme sexual abuse. Like I lost my
No.
job for
Yeah.
goodness sakes, right? Like
No, no.
first world problems. Nonetheless, it felt traumatic to me because it literally flipped my world upside down, and it's one of those stories that people would be like, "Ooh, well, that's not what she means."
Mm,
And so I know it is what you mean because it's my
mhm.
story, and I know you've
Yeah.
heard it a million times. So, like,
Yes.
how let's pull
Okay.
don't teach me yet, but, like, you know what I'm
So
saying?
here's
Like
the thing,
yeah.
like, trauma is little t or big T. Trauma
Mm,
is just change, and it's relative. Someone who is a millionaire could have a trauma because they lost, most of their money, but they still have investments, and someone else is over here like, "I'm just trying to put bread and meat on the table."
yeah.
That's not a trauma to me, but for that person, it's traumatic. It's very relatable to the life. But what we do psychologically is when something happens that's outside of what we think our identity is, we
Mhm.
tend to shy away from it and hide it because we have to put on a facade of who we think other people want us to be. So your trauma is about who are you really and be honest about what's happening in your life so people can see you as a real person. That's the bottom line in it. And so it doesn't have to be something very traumatic from your past, but it could be something that you believe is like, I can never tell that story to your point because that's not really what my audience wants to see. And I learned this on another podcast. I went in and told a story and they after the podcast, she said, "Well, what else would you like to share with me?" And I started telling her my story, and she's, "I wish you would have shared that on the podcast." And I
Oh,
said, "Really? Why?" She goes, "Because I'm going through that right now, being afraid of being seen, and I think my audience would really love to hear that." And I thought, "Oh, well, I was doing it too. Even though I teach story, I was like, the story's not appropriate." So I think really to your point, it doesn't have to be a deep, dark secret or something super traumatic. It can be a happy moment, but that moment is when we've made a decision to make a change. We
mm,
knew we either had to make a change or we've decided. And so I have a framework that I teach just for that, which I call the brave pivot. And it's
mhm.
a 5-step moment formula that helps you find the moment that you want to tell. And then you use it as the anchor in the center of your story.
Okay. Okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
love it,
yeah,
I love
then it doesn't have to be like I have to go, I have to be, do I have to have had a childhood abuse? No,
right, right,
not
right,
at all. Yeah.
right,
Thank you for
right.
asking that.
Yeah, you're welcome because I see it. Like, I see people being scared, and I know you alluded it to it in, like, 7 levels or 7 levels,
7
7
wise. Yeah. 7 levels
yeah.
deep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
7 wise deep.
I love it, like the why that makes you cry, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you so you coach people on how to pull these stories out of us, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
That's so cool. All right.
Yeah.
So listen, A, get with Melissa because you have a story in you. And so whether you're an author or a consultant or even like simply working in corporate, like how
Mm,
you tell your story of how you ended up in the language translation industry for all those years. Like again, I didn't realize the impact of story. Now we got in corporate, we got tons and tons and tons of training and they talk about storytelling, but it's more from the perspective of client experiences and yeah,
mhm.
because they're not buying me, but they technically
No.
still are. They're
Yes.
buying the confidence and the trust in what I deliver since I am in a very competitive, commoditized industry. So, like, am I going to do a 20-minute soliloquy on my story? No. But, like, understanding
Mm,
if you're an executive in corporate and you wanna write a book, or you're just like,
mm,
how
mm,
do I help communicate our mission? This is
mm.
what we wanna use Melissa
In
for.
moments. Yeah, in moments too. And I think the biggest thing here is sometimes the thing with anything that we are either not telling or we don't know how to tell is because we think it's too big, not important,
Mm,
or is part of our past, and we don't realize that it's impactful. And if you can learn how to tell it, I believe emotion comes through when you're unemotional about a subject.
mm,
That's really powerful. I've been in rooms with men who've said, I almost killed myself at 18, and here's why. And today I do this. That story in that few little moments with unemotion, just fact, and telling it, and the fact that they're in the position they are in the beautiful suit sitting in the boardroom made such an impact on me. It's like there's something about being able to tell a story in moments with enough emotion that we know it's meaningful, but without it being part of who you are right now. And I
mm,
think that's the key thing is that the story is the story for your future. It's not about who you were. And so I think that that's the key thing to telling any story is just take all the heat out of it and create a framework that allows you to go, okay, I can tell this story in 5 steps.
okay,
Here
teach
they
us the
are.
framework. Teach us the framework.
Now, this is just the middle part of the framework. I don't know if your audience is ready to hear it. I'll tell. It's called the brave pivot.
Okay.
And it's the same thing that first thing, how many of you guys have seen movies? Like, I love The Matrix. How does The Matrix start? Starts with this action scene that we're cutting between inside of a building where what is the female character's name? She's fighting all the bad guys, and then down there's the cops that are out on the street, and we don't even know what's going on. There's just this action. There's a picture that's being painted inside of that opening scene. So the very first step is paint the picture. So
Mm,
instead of saying, I got fired from my job and all these things happens, like I remember the day I was sitting at my desk and my boss walked in the door. I won't forget it. He was wearing a purple tie. I hated that tie.
mm,
You just paint a picture of what's going on. That's the very first step. What this does is it allows your audience immediately to step into, mirror you, and be in the room with you. It's like that movie effect, okay? The second thing is you tell us exactly what happened. I got fired. I lost my job. My husband almost left me. My baby was born. My husband looked at me for the first time. What is it? What's happening right then? And then tell us what you were thinking and feeling in that moment.
that's step 3.
That's step 3.
Okay.
Oh, it's actually thinking. Tell us what you were thinking. Step 3 is tell us what you were feeling. Step 4.
Okay.
And then step 5 is tell us what you decided.
Ooh.
That's it. So what you did is you took a moment and you assigned meaning to it. You
Mhm.
gave us the journey. Imagine you painted a picture. So we came into the room. You told us what happened. You told us what you were thinking about that moment, what you were feeling about that moment, which was the journey through it. And then you said, and in that moment, I decided.
Yeah, so this is a great example. Is it okay? Do you have something
Yeah,
else?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, because there might be people in the room like me right now. So, A, I have that traumatic, I lost my job situation. But
Yeah.
again, now if we're building the story for my real estate business, we always say, I think you and I agree, like, you don't tell, like, because again, I love how you're calling it a moment. You don't
Yeah.
tell your entire life. Well, I woke up at when I was 2 years old, obsessed with houses, right? Like, that's not the
Right.
story. But
No.
in a story like my real estate journey, I have when I invested in a real estate investing, and my parents like, "What are you doing?" And it was Dean Graziosi, who's like now super famous with Tony Robbins.
Yep.
That was a couple years. And then fast forward 2019, I formally got licensed, right? When I had a 6-month old, right? And then did some deals, became Airbnb superhost, blah, blah, blah. And then only a month and a half ago decided to go all in. So for somebody like me who's out there, like, okay, I hear what they're
Mhm.
saying about trauma on the far end. And then I hear what
Mhm.
Kristen's saying about like that middle trauma that doesn't feel good to share. But I'm way over here with this real estate thing. Like, where do you start your moment in time? Like, what's the picture you paint? Like, where do you pick that story up?
So what I would do in your if it's okay if I can share, what I would do in your situation is I would pull the thread because there's also a thread. You can turn a thread into a moment, which is real estate is a thread that's in your life. So I would find a moment and say, remembered when I realized that real estate not only was the bane of my existence, but the my full calling. And it started at this point. And I would tell a moment at the beginning, and then I would piggyback all those moments together and make that your moment. Like,
Okay.
talk about how, like, real estate was your trauma. Like, it was my guilty pleasure. It was my guilty, like, real estate has always been my go-to fix when it comes to, and then you go, I remember when, and you tell that story, and then fast forward to, and then fast forward to. So you can basically take your moments and put them all into one and
Give
then
it up
say,
for Melissa. Like,
yeah,
this isn't rehearsed, right? Like,
yeah, no,
literally, this is what Melissa's zone of genius is.
yeah,
So
it is.
you wanna get on a call with her or hire her, right? Like, it's because everybody's gonna be somewhere on that spectrum from,
Yes.
"Okay, you're right, I have something I'm not willing to share, and I don't know how it applies to my business, but I'm open to hearing what your thoughts are,"
Yeah.
to the far, far end, which I believe,
Mm,
uh, you
that's
called it,
yeah.
like, turning a thread into a moment.
Yeah, yeah, pulling that thread, you can pull things together, and I'm glad you're saying that, Kristen, because I typically, because of my childhood trauma, love working with women that have a story that they want to turn into a movement, and the way that shows up is they come to me saying, "I just wanna do something to help other women." However, one of the things that I can just say, and I'm not saying it to impress anyone, it's just I've leaned into this over time and realized that I have this zone of genius for connecting things together in ways that other people just can't. I can see threads of connection inside of businesses. I can see where people are missing things. I can see where offers are not working right. And I can see where your story fits in because your story becomes a sales process. And I use story to sell. And that's why it's so valuable. And I don't do it because I want to, oh, I'm going to use story to sell. I know story sells. So I use it. So one of the really cool things about what you're talking about is there are people that don't even see the thread themselves. Like,
Oh,
you and I were on a podcast recently together, and I even said to you, I think, "Well, your real estate's always been there. I saw the thread." And you go, "What?" And I said, "At the beginning of your story that you were telling started with real estate. It's
yeah.
there already." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, you saw it. You're too close to it." It's not because Chris is not a guru at what she does. It's because she's too close to it. You're too
Mhm.
close to the story. You can't see it. So sometimes if you can tell me your story, I can show you your business. I can literally take someone who has never built a business before. They can tell me the story of what they want to do. I can build them a story brand and turn it into a business and help them build it. Or I can show someone who's hiding in their business how to amplify their business simply by finding the right core stories for their brand. And you're right, it's not always trauma. Sometimes it's the thread that you're pulling, and you
Well,
can
you
do
said that.
this every day. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
At
get
first you
excited.
said
Sorry, go off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, at first you said it's not always trauma, and I tried to argue against it, but then I realized when I got inspired that I could use your framework you just taught us, right? Which is paint
Yeah.
the picture, tell exactly how were you thinking, feeling, and then what did you decide? You could use that framework to help with the real estate. And that's when I realized you're right. You were right. It's not always trauma, but Melissa, you do have a gift with story selling and sales. And I can see how the right person's going to hear this podcast, and it's like I always talk about, it's the 1%. It's
Mm,
not always like some big monumental overhaul. If you have a business doing
no.
$50 million or $50,000, like it doesn't have to be this big thing, but it literally is the glue that connects all of the various pieces. Or kind of how
Mhm.
you were just saying, it could be telling the story in a slightly better way to connect.
Yes, for sure. And you know what's interesting is that when I'm working with people, one of the things I notice is that we get into this mode of I have to go find clients. I got to crank it out. What if
Mm.
you just lean back and told your story and you were creating a business that was very lean, what we call a VIP business, where you're coaching high level, but in a shorter period of time, you're working with fewer clients because you're finding the right people that gravitate towards your story. What would your life look like if you could be on stage more sharing, writing the book, doing all the things that feed your soul. And the women and men that want to do those things don't do them because they just want to get known. They do them because trauma, here's what trauma does something to us. Trauma wants us to create significance in the world, big T and little t. The person who said we couldn't do it, the person who fired us, I've been fired before too, all those things. And you have this drive in you. I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them. That's trauma. That's a trauma response. And whenever you can turn that into impact and free your time, the best revenge is creating a movement. I mean, essentially, you can create much more freedom. Those people that want that, they're the ones that want to write books. They want to be on stage. They want to do more than just make money. And you can't do that chasing money. You got to chase your calling. If you
Oh my
don't tell your story, you can't chase your calling.
ugh,
So right now there's somebody out there, there's a woman like me, because I'm going to tell you, I don't know how many of you guys are alpha women. Like I was a wounded masculine woman for many years. I thought I could do it all myself. I didn't need anybody, all of the things. And I realized that was just me pulling back and trying to hide and build a fortress around myself. And a lot of people do this. And we see it. You don't think you're being seen, but you're being seen. So the minute you start going, hey, I'm just going to be vulnerable here, fall on my sword and say, I've got a story. Can I just share that with you? Man, I just need someone
mhm,
to hear this because I really want to help these people. And all of a sudden you start showing up and people want to they want to come to the stage where you're talking. They
mhm.
want to read the book that you're writing. They want to be on the podcast that you're hosting. And they start saying, I don't know what you do, but I want to work with you.
I
Or they say, you know what? I know what Kristin does. And she's the reason you need to go work with her is because she is the best. And here's her story. They start sharing your story forward. And all of a sudden you get known.
ugh.
So yeah, good stuff.
Well,
But
Melissa, you
I get
gave me
so
chills like every other minute in this podcast. Like this was you have a gift, my friend. We're gonna wrap up just for the sake of you've given us so much to think about. I mean, I would challenge everybody listening to whether you have your story or not, like consider her 5-step framework, Brave Pivot, and really think about what is that other story that you're hiding from or that is the thread that you could pull on to connect the dots. Because the other thing I know is a lot of times we get stuck, then we do have a story and it's so good,
mm.
how many years is it until we realize, well, hold on, that was actually now a few years ago. So do I need to rethink my story? So I just urge everybody listening to go and apply her Brave Pivot to your own stories to make sure you're doing it right. And then if you need help, reach out. What can we do next, Melissa? Or what do you want to leave us with?
Well, so thank you, Kristin, for giving me the opportunity to share that with your audience. And one of the things I would say for anybody that's listening, if you feel like you have a story and you're pregnant with this story and you just don't know how to use it, and I know there are people out there that are that way, I have a keynote framework that's absolutely free that I can gift to you that you can turn into a keynote, a sales pitch, a podcast interview, or even just a cocktail party conversation. I'd be happy to gift that to you. And then we have a workshop coming up called Go VIP. So if you want to turn your story into a business that frees you and creates a lot of income while you're making impact, then we would love to have you at the workshop as well.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm so glad we were able to make this work. We had a bit
Yeah.
of a scheduling snafu, but we're
Busy
here.
ladies. Yeah.
Worth every second. All right. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you for having me, Kristen. It was a pleasure.